So, guys, I want to talk about Ricky Starks, Ricky Saints. He won the NXT championship. And, I do want to say that I'm a very busy motherfucker, so that's why I don't follow NXT. But if I had time, if I can turn back time, I would easily just, be watching NXT and AEW if I had time. But, congratulations to my boy, Ricky Starks, Ricky Saints. And then also the other thing, too, is that if I liked NXT better, I would go to NXT over AEW, or if I liked both, I would watch both, really, So I do want to say that I do regret not making time for NXT. And definitely if they're ever in the New England area, I will be watching it, But I do want to say congratulations to Ricky Starks for being the NXT champion. And definitely it is a missed opportunity for AEW because, when you look at AEW right now, I've said this many times really, though, what AEW needs to do to be competitive to WWE is restructuring. And that means, you're seeing a lot of really great trios teams. Dalton Castle and the Outlanders can be something. The Hurt Syndicate, the Ops, the Bang Bang Gang and other things like that. And then also, that the women's blood and guts match where you can take you can take 10 women, make them big stars, really, make them stand out, give promos, build to something. And they have a lot of tag teams now, really. They have to just kind of really build their divisions, really. But one of the big divisions that they suffer in is really the singles because there's really not a lot of great singles wrestlers. You just had Anthony Bowens, who could have been somebody, but they had him lose a lot, and they're going back to the Acclaimed. And really, Anthony Bowen suffered because of bad booking. And then the other issues, you have people like Ricky Starks and Jade Cargill who left for greener pastures. And that's important because obviously Ricky Starks was one of the best stars in AEW. He had really great mic skills. And ultimately, he was very edgy, when he was calling Max Maxi Pads. And I just don't know why he wasn't pushed that well. I think it could have been two things. I think it could have been a little outspoken about getting bad booking. And I also think that maybe another thing too is that sometimes there's a lot of egos in the company. So, people would want to push a Will Ospreay in AEW because he's like the Michael Jackson of professional wrestling with all the crazy moves. But Ricky Starks is not that guy who does sky twisters or has 40-minute matches. He doesn't need to do that. It's like what OTR Central said about the Acclaimed. One of the best things about the Acclaimed is that they have talk and gimmicks, really. They don't need to do, a 40-minute Will Ospreay match, or they don't need to roll around thumbtacks, really. And Ricky Starks is the same way. He's more of a talker, and he does good wrestling, really. So it is a loss for AEW. Because, there's a lot they could have done with it. And easily, if you did the Death Riders, how much more better would they be is if you got rid of Wheeler Yuta and you had Big Cass in his role, because Big Cass can talk and he looks formidable. Or what would happen if you had Ricky Starks in that group? Or what would happen if, you had... It might be Daniel Garcia versus Daddy Magic. So what would happen if you got rid of Daniel Garcia in the past and you had Ricky Starks versus Daddy Magic? Because Daddy Magic has a lot of emo. He's a very emotional person. Like I said, the promo he did when he got beaten up by MJF, and that mental breakdown, that was perfect. That was cinema. Imagine if you had that in Ricky Starks, you could have had something. Imagine if you had Kyle Fletcher and Ricky Starks. That could have been something done very well, really, because they both can talk. They both can do shit, really. So... yeah, as I said, really, I wish Ricky Starks greener pastures. The other thing about Ricky Starks, and I will say this, is that I did have a conversation with Ricky Starks, and I did say that I felt really sad when he was in AEW because what happened was, he had his last match I remember was when he got beaten down. He was in a squash match, and then he got beaten down by Jay White, really. And I was saying, my intuition was saying that they're trying to have a New Japan department in AEW, really. So they're throwing him under the bus because they want to build up Jay White and other people like that. And I know that that's just not right, really. You got to work with what you got, really. And then ultimately, too, Jay White's been injured. I don't remember one promo Jay White has done, really. And one of the worst AEW main events was Jay White, John Moxley, and I think another person, and Adam Page, if I'm correct, and that Fatal 4-Way they had at Wrestle Dream last year, and Jay White was in that. And then one of the worst pay-per-views they also had was MJF versus Jay White. Like, remember, that was the one-legged man, really. So I think Jay White doesn't even have a lot of that backstage pull where he says, hey, you know what, this is stupid, really. Like, you're going to have me lose against one-legged man. And I've been an IWGP champion or things like that. But really, like, pushing Jay White over Ricky Starks or bearing Ricky Starks for Jay White was, you kind of seen the outcome of that, really. But I did have a conversation with Ricky Starks a few months ago, and he did say, you know what, my intuition is right. That yes, it's true that Tony Khan does way too much work. It's also very true that Tony Khan gets so busy that you have a lot of talented people and you don't really develop them that well, really. My analogy is Tony Khan is like somebody running like somebody running a Las Vegas kitchen. You have your Will Ospreay, which is your steak. Then you have Ricky Starks, which is like your your prized dessert, really. And then you just don't put it out because you're focusing on all the other dishes, really. So it's almost like he's so busy that he doesn't see the good talents that he has, really. And sometimes you have that good dish, that good talent, and they go somewhere else because they're like, hey, I don't want to sit around. Like the Hardy Boys. Like the fact that the Hardy Boys had no direction in AEW is like, you need to give Tony Tom that Dr. Dave Schultz bitch slap. You have people like Saraya, who could have been a big star, because now you have Saraya. I'm not sure where she's going. She might go back to WWE, but yeah, imagine like AJ Lee coming back to WWE, and then now you have Saraya, the other woman who helped start the women's division in AEW. Or like, as I said, you look at somebody like Nyla Rose, who in my opinion is one of the most underrated wrestlers in history, along with Awesome Kong, really. So I really just think that it is sad that's such a missed opportunity, and it's also bad for Ricky Starks, because I do want to say that the NXT champion is not a world heavyweight title. A lot of people don't know this about the NXT championship. It doesn't count as a heavyweight championship. It's just a championship. It's almost like with the ECW championship in WWE, that the ECW championship is a heavyweight title when it was when it was owned by Paul Heyman, but when it became in WWE, they don't consider it a heavyweight championship. So the NXT title's in the same boat, really, where it's not considered a heavyweight title. Or another great example is the TNA championship. When TNA wrestling, the TNA championship is a heavyweight title. But for a long time, in the Dixie Carter era, the TNA championship did not count as a heavyweight championship in the eyes of WWE. Like when AJ Styles came, they mentioned that he was the NWA and IWGP championship, and that's with Ricky Starks. That in a lot of people's eyes, the NXT championship should be a heavyweight championship, and I do agree with that. But I don't. But it's not really. It's not considered at this point. It's the same thing as winning the ECW championship in WWE. It's not considered a heavyweight title. I don't know why they do that. That's fucking stupid. But yeah, but imagine if he was the AEW champion. Or imagine if he did something like say, Casino Gauntlet, Ricky Starks wins. He cashes in on Jon Moxley instead of Christian Cage. Or imagine if you had like Ricky Starks versus like Swerve Strickland. That would be a hell of a match, because they're both like really rough people. There's so many things that they could have done with Ricky Starks. There's so many good pay-per-view matches. There's so much money they could have made off this, really. So it's almost like the old saying goes, they have a really big roster in AEW. So it's almost like saying, when you do the women's blood and guts match, if you build up a lot of women and a lot of women are standing out, really, what do you do with those women afterwards? Do you make the division about Mercedes, or do you make your division about all those other women, as well, really? When you look at people like Dalton Castle, who gets over because of the metrosexual thing he's doing, and then also the attention that he's grabbing. Like, imagine if they didn't push Dalton Castle, and Dalton Castle spent the last 4 or 5 years in WWE. Imagine if they went to New Orleans and they had Dalton Castle and the boys. And they did like an extravagant version like that in New Orleans. Just imagine how that would pop the crowd, really. So it is missed opportunity, really. And there are people on the AEW roster like Nyla Rose, a great example of somebody who could be doing a lot for the company. Like Nyla Rose, if they don't push her that well, go to WWE. They'll make her a megastar, and they'll make her they'll make her a megastar, because we know about Awesome Kong, really. Unfortunately, she got pregnant. I'm not saying that in a mean way, but unfortunately, when she went to WWE, she got pregnant. She could have been a megastar for them, but unfortunately, when she was in TNA wrestling, they shorted her out of her pay. They also didn't feature her that well, and she dealt with racism. Like, she could have been like a megastar. So, like learn from history. There are a lot of wrestlers that could be megastars and that companies don't recognize. Like Stone Cold Steve Austin was an excellent example. In WCW, he got fired, I believe, and he wasn't like that booked that well, really. And then when he went to WWE, give me a hell yeah, really. You look at Dustin Rhodes, he became Goldust when he went to WWE, because there was some talent in him and stuff like that, So yeah, when you have people on your roster and you see what they can do, really pay attention. This is why that's why Tony Khan needs a Mr. Smithers, Mr. Smithers from The Simpsons. He needs a Mr. Smithers to kind of like help him out, really. But because sometimes when you have a lot of really great wrestlers, and then there's some people that stand out above other ones, you got to make sure those ones who stand out above other ones are on top of the company, or else then you have Wheeler Yuta, who looks like a crack whore lumberjack on top of the company doing promos, and he sounds like a damn high school freshman. Same thing with Nick Lane, But congratulations to Ricky Starks, really. But it is a missed opportunity. I'll shit you not, really. As an AEW fan, it is a missed opportunity. But I will say that, just learn your lessons, really. AEW needs to make themselves bigger and better. But, again, Ricky Starks, it's sad that he's not at Wembley Stadium next year. That would draw lots of people if he was booked very well. You could have even done Adam Page versus Ricky Starks at Wembley Stadium, and that could have done a big draw, really. Because of the mic piece and the emotions that Ricky Starks can carry, really. So it's definitely, as I said, it is a missed opportunity, really. But congratulations to Ricky Starks. Hopefully AEW can learn from this, and as I said, they're in a restructuring period. They need to build all the stars that they can. They have a lot of stars in the roster that can do shit. Their ultimate goal is to make all stars that they can, rebuild divisions, work on emotional stories and personalities, and build upwards. And ultimately, really, as I said, the biggest heel in AEW is that writer's room. So ultimately, Tony Khan has to be Vince McMahon 316. I had the brass to fire your ass. So if they're not doing a good job in the writer's room, let them go, really. Fuck them, fire them. So and that's what he has to do. So sorry, my phone just buzzed, really. But I really just that's all I gotta say, really. Congratulations to Ricky Starks, and all the best in his career. And you know what, he's my boy. He's my nigga. Because he's a great guy, good heart, very hardworking. It made me sad. It really broke my heart that they buried him in AEW, really. But greener pastures, and hopefully intercontinental champion, maybe Money in the Bank winner, stuff like that. There's a lot of shit that he can do, really. And I think my fear is that they could release him because WWE likes to release a lot of people. They're money hungry. But I pray to God that doesn't become his future, because there's a lot that he can do. And if they do that to him, he needs to go to New Japan. But Rick Starks, he is a gem. He is a diamond. And I wish him well to his career. So congratulations. And yes, as somebody who watches AEW, someone who's a fan of AEW, it is a missed opportunity. And I shit you not.